I was out on a routine workers' compensation surveillance. Nothing special, nothing dangerous. The subject was a middle-aged male who injured his legs while on the job. I had worked this case a couple of times prior. I knew the neighborhood setup. I knew the best places to sit, and I knew how to follow him out without getting burned. I also knew that he drove like a maniac once he got out of the neighborhood. I had lost him prior on mobile surveillance, so the pressure was on to make sure that I kept a visual on him at all times. He had a medical appointment that morning at a clinic not far from his house. It was literally less than 5 minutes away. After setting up, I observed his wife leave the house just as she had on past days of surveillance. Then a couple of hours later, about an hour before his medical appointment, I see him walking out of the front door. I get the video I need. He gets in his car and the chase is on. After exiting the neighborhood, he gets on a major road and takes off. He's driving like 45 to 50 miles per hour in a 35. I keep up the best I can, knowing that there are plenty of stoplights ahead to help me out. In cases like this, I really keep a good eye out way in front of me so I know what lights are turning red and what lights are turning green. He goes a couple of miles up the road and then pulls into a shopping center. Woo, I made it this far. He hops out of his car and heads into a grocery store. I grab my trusty covert camera and I head in on foot surveillance. I got tons of video of the subject inside the store, walking back to his car, putting his groceries in the car, and then entering his vehicle. I had stood in the parking lot with my covert camera to get all of this footage, as there was no place for me to park earlier where I could see his car from my car. And man, was the video good. He was walking fine, bending over fine, put a lot of groceries into his car with no problems, and entered his vehicle showing no signs of difficulty. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. He jumps into his car, then I have to make a mad dash for mine. I jump in and I throw it into reverse and then I take off. He has a good head start on me. I see him approaching the red light at the shopping center exit, and then suddenly it turns green and away he goes. I'm still about 1,000 feet away and I have 3 cars in front of me. Everyone makes it through the light except the car in front of me. And, of course, me. I sit there for what seemed like an eternity and watch my subject speed away. After the light turns green, I take off like an IndyCar racer. I can see him at a distance, way up there, about a half a mile, pulling away. I'm in and out of cars. I'm trying to close the gap. Then suddenly I see it. Red and white flashing lights about 3 blocks ahead of me. The cop has another car pulled over. Everyone is pulling off to the left lane, slowing me down, and I'm like, great, another obstacle. But I'm also very happy that it wasn't me getting pulled over. The last visual I had on my target, he was heading back in the general direction towards his residence. So I decided to just go there as quickly as I can. As I pull into the neighborhood, I'm able to grab a little bit of video of him as he carries the last few bags of groceries into his house. Ooh, saved in a nick of time. I found him and I got some more video. Shortly after this, he comes back out, jumps into his car, and away we go again. This time I have the advantage since I know it is close to his appointment time. So when we get out of the neighborhood, I get in front of him and I actually make it to the doctor's office before him. I love it when a plan comes together. I saw the same cop on the road with another car pulled over, and I say to myself, good thing that isn't you, John. I get my video of my subject when he arrives at the clinic, walking with a bit of a limp this time. Go figure. His medical lasts about an hour. Then he comes out, limps his way to his car, gets in, and then drives off, and away we go. He gets back on that same major road and heads back towards that same shopping center where he was at the grocery store. Again, driving at a high rate of speed, well over the speed limit. I had a tough time keeping up with him, folks. Again, the lights were in my favor, so I was able to successfully follow him to a pharmacy this time. He walked into the pharmacy with no limp. Go figure. Then he returns about 10 minutes later and off we go again. He's heading back towards his house. Now you won't believe what happened when he arrived back at his house. Okay, he's about 3 cars in front of me and pulling away. I'm trying to keep up, but man, is it ever hard. There's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of traffic lights. I know he has no groceries this time, so if he goes home, I need to be right on him if I'm going to get video at the residence. Then suddenly, boom, the next light turns red. The car in front of me hits his brakes. My target floors it and makes it through the light, and there I sit. After the light turned green, I floor it. I start weaving in and I start weaving out of traffic. I see my subject up ahead about 3 blocks at a light. I know I have to make it if I'm going to get my video. I keep accelerating as I approach the light. I give a little more gas. I see I'm closing the gap. Now my subject is less than a block ahead of me. After getting through the light, I'm like, woo, I made it. And the flashing lights and the siren. Whoops, I forgot something. That traffic cop sitting there on his motorcycle. Now surely he will give me a break, right? Right? I pull over, grab my camera, get a little bit of video of my subject's car pulling away, then roll down my window, get my stuff ready. As the officer approaches, I show him my PI license and inform him that I know I was speeding, but I'm on mobile surveillance following my subject as I point ahead. And then he says, "Oh yeah, looks like he's getting away. And he wasn't the one going 45 and a 30. May I see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance, sir?" As my heart sinks, I grab my documents and hand them over to the officer. But wait, the craziest part is still yet to come. I then notice I can see over into the subject's neighborhood over there from the road that I'm on. I grab my camera, step out of the car, maybe not the smartest thing to do. Then I said, "Officer, can I ask a quick favor?" He stops, spins around, and says, what? I said, "My subject lives right over there. Can I go stand on the sidewalk and try to get some video?" He says, sure. I couldn't believe it. I figured I would have been told to get back in my car. I think maybe because I had showed him my license and told him what I was doing, it helped me a bit. I was able to go about 20 feet and see my subject's residence and got some video of him. Lucky for me, he decided to do some things outside before going into the house. I got a few minutes of video, then I got my $200 ticket. He lowered it to 5 miles over the speed limit for me. Then I went and I finished my case. As I do with all my cases, I conducted a background on my subject. Nothing came up criminally, not even a speeding ticket. I then conducted an open source intelligence investigation on him. I found multiple social media accounts for him that had some seriously interesting information. Now, on all of his social media pages, I found photos of him in baseball uniforms. These were pictures going back for many years, back to when he was a teenager. There was information leading me to believe that he played softball on a regular basis all of his adult life, and he played on multiple teams in multiple leagues. He appeared to be quite the athlete, to be sure. Then I went to the websites for local towns to see what softball leagues were available in our area. In total, I found 6 leagues that I felt might be leagues my subject might play in. I then scoured their online records to see if I could find any information indicating that my subject had played in that league. As I was going through these records, boom, there it was. I found a men's competitive league with his name on it for prior years. I also noticed that the league did not have the current year's team rosters completed, and it was still early before the season started, but it did have the game schedule up, and their first game was in just a few days. So then I reached out to my client. I let them know my findings. Then I proceeded with the original request that they had made, which included 2 days of surveillance at the subject's residence. I get up early in the morning, I grab my gear, and I head out just like any normal day on the job. I get on scene, I find a good stationary position where I can see the residents of both of my vehicles, and I get all set up, and I sit and I wait. And then I sit and I wait, and then I sat and I waited some more. Almost 4 hours in, I see his wife come out of the residence, go to one of the vehicles, grab an item out of the trunk that appeared to be a baseball equipment bag. I am like so excited. I am ready to go. I was waiting for him to go, maybe to practice, maybe a team meeting, anywhere. I was getting so excited. I sat there and I sat there and I sat there some more. After another couple of hours, I see his wife come back out of the house, place the bag back in the car. Then I see her get into the driver's seat of the car, and I see my subject waving to her from the front window as she drives down the street and out of the neighborhood. So I sat there for a little longer, hit my 8 hours for the day, and I headed back to the office. At least I did see my subject. I knew he was there, and I found out that his wife probably played some softball as well. My second day of surveillance was a little more exciting. My subject and his wife went to the grocery store earlier in the day. Nothing too exciting about it. He wasn't carrying any 50-pound bags of dog food or anything like that, but he did display a normal gait while walking and never showed any obvious signs of pain or discomfort while he was walking and doing his shopping. After the grocery store trip, they stopped at a burger joint and got some food to go. Then they headed home. Then I sat there for a while, and then I sat there some more. And yep, you guessed it, I sat there even longer. This is the life of a surveillance investigator, folks. A lot of sitting and waiting tends to happen. I did hear from my client, and they wanted me to see if I could figure out if he was on that softball team, so I got another day of surveillance. I decided to start later on the third day. The game started at 6:30 p.m., so it just didn't make sense to go out at 6 o'clock in the morning. I started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at his residence, and I figured if I never saw him, I could go to the game after it started to check and see if he was there. Now, after about an hour, here he comes out of the house carrying one of those baseball equipment bags. He puts it into the trunk of the car, then he goes back inside. He comes out a little while later wearing a softball jersey, and he gets in his car, and away he goes. The chase is on, folks. Okay, it wasn't really much of a chase. I knew where he was going most likely, and the ball fields were only a few minutes away from his house. As we pulled into the parking lot, I grabbed a front parking spot and I jumped out and I went on foot surveillance. I had already checked out the fields, and I decided my best shot for video was to get to the center area ahead of him and sit on a bench with my covert camera getting video all the way as he walked towards the fields carrying that big old heavy baseball bag. Man, I love it when a plan comes together. It worked perfect. Here he comes, carrying that big bag, walking with some of his team buddies, laughing and having a good time. But wait, that jersey, it belongs to another team, not the one that I thought he was going to be on. No worries, I got my video and I am set to watch the game. He gets to the team dugout, they do some warm-ups, and then the game begins. He was a pretty amazing softball player, I must say. I really got into the game and I found myself almost rooting for him and his team. He scored multiple times and had some amazing plays as shortstop. As the game is wrapping up, I decided to go back to my car where I can get some good video as he walks back to his car and as he enters his car. I get to my car, I get all set up, and then I wait. And then I wait. And I waited some more. After about 30 minutes, I decided I'd better go see what he's up to. I figured that maybe he stopped to grab something to eat. I get back to the center area of the fields, and he is nowhere to be found. I check the bathrooms. Nope, not there. I check the concession stand. Nope, not there. And then I see her, his wife, sitting in the dugout in uniform. I figured he must be there watching her somewhere. I get over to the bleachers and he is nowhere to be found. I get a seat and I figure he will just show up eventually. I can see the parking lot and I can see his car is still there, so I know that I'm good. As his wife's team starts to take the field, it dawned on me she was on a co-ed team. And there he was heading out to shortstop. Alrighty then, he plays on two teams. This is great. I get even more great video. So much, I'm afraid that my covert camera is going to run out of space or the battery is going to die. Now, wouldn't you know it, his team won. Nice, 2 wins in one night. I decide to head back to my car, but I do it a little more cautiously this time. As I'm walking to my car, I see several guys walking from the parking lot with jerseys on for the team that I thought he played on in the first place. I get to my car, I stick in a fresh SD card in my covert camera, and I grab my portable phone charger so I can charge it up, and I head back over to the fields. Sure enough, there he is in yet another jersey with the team that I thought he might be on in the first place. Now, I like softball, folks, but this is getting ridiculous. I sit down in the bleachers. By this point, I just feel like one of the regular fans there. This time, he is the pitcher, not the shortstop. Okay, whatever. I get even better video this time. The game comes to an end, and guess what? Yep, his team won yet again. It was an amazing night for him and an even more amazing night for me. He finally heads to his car, and then he heads home, and I get to go home as well. I had several hours of video to attend to, and I had to get an update out to my client right away. The client was ecstatic, to say the least. I found more information, and come to find out, he played regularly on the first team and the last team, the one I thought that he might be on. He was a sub for that second team that his wife was on. I later found out that he often subbed for other teams as well. There was nothing really special about this case except the fact that 2 other PIs had worked the case prior to me, and no one had ever set eyes on the subject. When I got it, I first thought maybe the other PIs got burned or maybe the guy just moved away. The provided address was a residential home in a quiet city neighborhood. After reviewing the reports from previous PIs, I noticed they had taken similar stationary positions as each other, so I decided to sit further away, almost 3 blocks, just in case the subject had seen them and was suspicious. I also discovered that the provided address might be his parents' address, so I had reason to believe even if he did not reside there, he may show up or they may lead me to him. Upon arrival, I observed one vehicle in the driveway. The vehicle did not match any vehicles I had for the subject or in any of the previous surveillance reports. After running the plates, I discovered it was not registered to the subject nor any known associates. I located a good stationary surveillance position about 3 blocks away where I could see the front door area of the residence and the street in front of the residence. After a couple of hours, I saw that vehicle backing out of the driveway onto the street. I knew I had to hurry as the car was going away from me and was a good distance away. I started my car, threw it in the gear, and away I went. The chase was on, folks. Thankfully, there was a red light at the main road heading out of the neighborhood, so I was able to catch up to the vehicle. I could tell the driver matched the general description of the subject I was looking for, but then that's all I had was a brief general physical description. So just about any guy could have matched that description. I followed him for about 30 minutes, then he arrived at a construction site. I was like, wow, how lucky is this? My subject worked construction, and this guy drove to a construction site. Could it be my guy? I got a ton of video that day, but there was still that question in my mind. Was he the subject of my investigation, since that car was not registered to the subject or any known associates? I got some photos off of my camera, and I sent them to the client, who sent it on to the injured client to see if this was the right person. After about 3 hours and getting some really, really amazing video footage, the client called me back. I was so excited. I get on the phone and I'm like, well, is it him? Is it him? And then there was this long silence. Then my client says, no, John, that wasn't him. They have no idea who this guy is. So back to stationary surveillance at the residence I go. Bummed out, but at least I gained some more information for the case. I finished my day with no further activity observed, and then I headed home. Day 2 rolls around, and I go out again to the same address. This time I parked a little closer so I could see who gets in the vehicle. After a couple of hours, I see the same guy I saw on the previous day get into the car and head out the same time as before. I just let him go. No reason to follow him. He's probably just going to that same work site. After a couple more hours, I decided to go on foot surveillance to see what I could see. I walked past the residence, and it appeared that somebody was inside the residence, but I couldn't tell who it was. I decided to do a pretext door knock using the old lost kitty guys. I pulled up a photo of a kitten on my phone, and I went to the door and I knocked. Shortly after, a younger adult female subject answered the door. I get my story out about my lost kitten, and I show her the photo, and she says, nope, I haven't seen your kitten, sorry. Then I hear another voice behind her. Let me see, says a little girl about 4 years old as she sticks her head from around behind her mother. I show her the picture. She says she's so cute, but she hasn't seen my kitten either. I thank them, and I continue on. As I approach my car, I get that terrible sinking feeling again. My subject is 20 and unmarried with no known children. Looks like another bad address. I call my client, let them know, and we decided to wrap it up and see if we can either confirm the address or find another good address for him. The client heard back from the insurance company. The subject had an upcoming doctor's appointment. This is absolutely great news. I can pick him up at the appointment and follow him home. Then we will have the address that we need. I show up a few days later at the doctor's appointment. I get a good position at the clinic, and I set up a motion detection camera pointing right at the entrance door. This camera picks up everybody that's going in and coming out of the clinic. I then grab my covert camera. I go into the clinic to see if I can set up stationary position inside. As I go in, it is my lucky day. There's a large waiting room inside the door and multiple doctor's offices. I find a good place to sit and wait where I can watch that front door for when my subject comes or goes. And wait is what I did, folks. I waited, then I waited, then I waited some more. His appointment was at 10. I got there about 9:30. I went inside about 9:40. There's no way I missed him. At about 11:30, I decided I had been sitting there too long, and I reach out to the client. The client reaches out to the insurance company, and we wait some more. Finally, the insurance company calls us back and says he was a no-show for the appointment. But they reached out to him, and they rescheduled for the following week. Okay, so another appointment next week. We still have a chance. Now, what happened the next week at the doctor's appointment was truly, truly amazing. Another week goes by. I do the same thing, and guess what? I dare you guess. Yep, Yep, I never see him again. This time the insurance company calls us back and says he went in early at 9 o'clock. So I must have just missed him by a few minutes when I arrived. No worries though. He has PT, physical therapy, set up now twice a week. So I get that schedule. First day of PT comes around, I show up early and I never see him go inside. But about 15 minutes before his scheduled PT, I see a guy who matches the description exiting the clinic. I grab some video and I see him walking around the far side of the building. I go to follow him. I get around the corner and he is nowhere to be found, but I did notice a pickup driving past me the opposite direction, and as I glanced over I see the same guy in the passenger seat. I tried to get turned around and follow him, but they sped away far too fast. Okay, this case is getting to me now. How many times can I miss this guy? We sent the client some stills from the video and voila, it was our guy. So at least I had some good ID shots of him. The next PT day rolls around and the client has approved a second investigator. We do the same thing. This time, the second PI is out back watching. This time, though, I see the guy getting dropped off about 30 minutes late by a taxi. He then goes inside, so we figure we have about 30 minutes to an hour. Not 5 minutes went by, and here he comes out. Gets into a white pickup, and they take off. The chase is on. I throw my car into gear, and the other PI tries to get around as fast as he can safely. But he can't. There's too much foot traffic. I barely keep up with the pickup. Then it pulls onto a major 4-lane highway and heads out of town at a high rate of speed. I floor it and I try to keep up, but they are going 15 to 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. I follow at a distance, but I lose visual contact as they enter the next town. Seriously, I say to myself, how does this keep happening? After talking with the client, they decided to try one more time. But this time they tell us we don't care what it takes, just keep a good follow on him. Now this has me a bit nervous, folks. I hate speeding and I hate doing things dangerous, but we figure if we set up right, maybe one of us can get in front or an early tail to help the situation out just a little bit. We have no idea when he is going to show up, so we showed up very early. The guy shows up about an hour early and enters the clinic. About a half hour later, he comes out. This time, though, we saw a similar pickup come into the parking lot and park, but nobody got out of it. One of us kept an eye on him as the subject walks up, the pickup pulls up, and the subject gets inside. We also had a car waiting at the main exit to start the tail right away. Okay, the chase is on. Here we go. 3 gators, 3 radios in hand. We followed and we followed and we followed some more. Then after about an hour, we see them pull into a wooded area out in the hills in the country. There was a lot of new development going on out there, so we decided to wait a few minutes and let them get to where they were going, and then we could go in and we could find them. It worked. We found the pickup and the subject, but there was no place to park without being seen. So we decided to walk in towards the new residence that they were working at through the woods. One of us stayed outside in case he left, while the other 2 went on foot. While they were on foot surveillance, they got a ton of video of him working on the roof throughout the day. About halfway through the day, we see the subject getting into a pickup with another guy. So here we go again, back on the road. The chase is on again. This time they head back towards the Denver area. We stick to them like glue. They are driving fast. They are driving slow. They're going fast. They're changing lanes. They're changing back. And well, you know, if you do a lot of surveillance, you know what's going on. They're trying to see if anybody is following them. It was the toughest, the most strenuous follow I have ever had, folks, but it ain't over yet. The craziest, scariest moment is still to come. Now, we followed them for over an hour with this crazy pattern. We are not sure who is burned and who is not, but we figured they were suspicious of at least one of us. I had been on them a long time, both times, so we figured most likely I was burned. One of the PIs was staying way back most of the time in case they pulled off suddenly, so we figured he was the least likely to have been burned. After this hair-raising follow, we see them pull into a trailer court. We're familiar with this court, and we know it has only one way in and one way out. So the PI that we figured that was the least likely to have been burned set up a stationary position a few blocks away where he could watch to see if they left, while myself and the third PI set up to follow at a distance if they left again. Suddenly we hear on the radio, "Here they come!" I'm like, "Which way?" Then he says, "Right toward me." I ask, "Is it the same pickup? Is it our guy?" He says, "I'm not sure." There's about 5 guys in it. I'm like, what? He says, there are 2 guys inside and 3 guys in the bed. Wait, here comes another pickup with 5 or 6 guys in it. They're both heading straight toward me, blocking both lanes. I'm like, get out of there, flip a U-turn and get on the highway. We will intercept. I then head out like a banshee trying to get to the highway where I told him to go. As I approach, I see the other gator with 2 pickups full of guys chasing him. I tell him to go in front of me. I slow down a bit. I let him get in front of me. Then I play obstacle in the road. I then gave the other PI instructions to head straight towards the local police department and just pull in front and park. I and the third PI then sped away and we catch up to him, and all 3 of us pull into the police department, and we see the pickups suddenly stop and turn around and leave as fast as they were chasing us. Later, I discovered these guys were all part of a very notorious gang. I am convinced they knew about us long before we knew about them.